Well, something really, really difficult is coming our way on top of what I think looks like next year um, across the whole U.S.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's why they don't care about the debt or anything like that, because they believe, the elites believe, and I can show you exact evidence that there's some kind of disaster coming. They believe it's a solar disaster, and they're prepping for it. But uh, but they've been doing it ever since 1957,
right.
1958. They put together the geophysical year, and they sent people out all over the earth to do measurements and everything. And they came back, and NASA was created the next year.
Hello and welcome back to Raised by Giants. I'm Ryder Lee. Welcome everyone in the chat. We are live and wow, do we have an amazing show for you guys here today for the 200th episode special. But it's been a little over a year since we were all last together and a lot has transpired, to say the least. We're a little bit of halfway through the year here, halfway through 2023. So I want to pose a question to each of you. What should we be looking for to happen in the second half of 2023 here? And I want to get everyone's thoughts on this. But Penny, I want to start with you. Let's jump to you first so you can kind of set the tone for our discussion here. What do you see happening for the rest of 2023? More of the same or what's going on there?
I'm going to say more of the same and a little bit more difficult, maybe a lot more difficult. I see this is something that I keep seeing again and again. There's some kind of change in Washington, D.C. It's big, it's messy, and it's not and there's another change next year. So that's the first thing. Another thing that I see is I guess I'll call it financial chaos and a big deepening of the anger that I'm seeing, hearing, and actually experiencing in a lot of people. Their fuse is so short, it's like, don't create any sparks. So that really concerns me. I see problems with health. We'll just say with big health challenges, big health problems, and food. There's not enough food. There's not enough of anything. And people are trying to keep food on the shelf, and a lot of people are growing food. I think I just saw statistics where we typically had 35% of the population in the U.S. growing food. Now it's up to 75 to 85%. People are knowing something. Maybe that's David's fault or David's accomplishment.
David influencing people to do the right thing, brother.
Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, we can talk about those, but I'm really interested in what the other guys are seeing.
Jay, what do you see happening for the rest of 2023?
Well, try to be as careful as I can here. I hear that we're going to be running out of pharmaceuticals here. There's been a slowdown from China. We don't have factories anymore. And there's a lot of evidence that even now they're putting placebos in because they can't replace the drug. And that's going to break out here soon. And then the pharmaceutical companies are going to have to come clean and say, it's kind of a quiet crisis right now, but it's brewing and getting stronger.
Thank you. Wayne, what do you see happening rest of 2023?
I think my background's in payment. So, here, I guess it will be on Saturday, the Federal Reserve will start going to what they call the system Fed now. It's the first step that now leads to the collapse of the greenback, and it is going to be the backup currency. Biden has already signed the executive orders for such. And I think for the American consumer, it's going to be a real wake-up call.
Check this out. Many people today struggle to manage their weight, but this is more true than ever after the age of 20. This is because after the age of 20, our body's metabolism slows down by as much as 4% every decade. Luckily, there's ways to help get that fast metabolism back and in time for summer. If you want to try it now, because last time they ran out of supply, took them a little while to get stock and inventory back in, more and more difficult with the supply chains. Also for the Adapt 2030 audience, take 51% off your order by going to adaptwithketo.com or click on that link in the description box below. It'll take you to the same place. And now on with the video.
And I think that within that, it can go a number of different ways. And finally, I think that here in the United States is what we saw in Moscow over the weekend. I think there's going to be a big shakeup in our government. I think it's going to really rock the three tenets of what our government is about. And who knows what 24 is going to be like.
David, what do you see happening, my friend?
It depends on how each of those events that everybody spoke about already gets, or they want it to amplify. So remember that Hunga Tonga eruption last year, 10% moisture added to the atmosphere. If you look at the depletion in the ozone down in the southern hemisphere, it's orders of magnitude less, or I should say decrease, than it normally is. It's not even really, it's just very, very beginning of the cusp of the season of the ozone hole season. Generally, what you consider the ozone hole maximum would be somewhere in October or late September, early October. We're already getting near those numbers now, if you trace back through the last prior years. So the runaway ozone depletion event will be a global cascading event that will be used, push and pull, in conjunction with all of these other things, in addition to, like Penny, what you said with the food, to explain away the crop losses, to explain away hyperinflation. It'll be pushed in and pulled out and reinserted and blended in with other events to get the maximum fear out of it. Unfortunately, but you already see where it's going.
Do you think that we have to worry about natural disasters or manufactured natural disasters? Because we know that they have the ability to create storms. They can pretty much control the weather however they want. Dave, do you think that we have to worry about that at any point toward the end of this year?
Those technologies could be used to amplify events in case the human domain gets out of control. And when I say that, there's cause, react, solution, effect. If the human does not obey and the directive of where it's supposed to be pushed with the stimulus, if humanity wakes up for a better point and starts to go the other direction, like, whoa, uncontrollable thought, that amplification and extremes in whatever it would be, forest fires, volcanic eruption, twisting of weather in the jet streams and cloud cells, in addition to the moisture that's in the atmosphere and where everything's already cavitating and tweaking along 20 south and 20 north anyway. I think there'll be that blend. If humanity can't be controlled, it'll be put through extremes to get people to stop thinking about and fear for their lives. And then, you're going to swing the pendulum this way to survival, and then they'll pull you back in the middle of the narrative. I keep seeing this again and again. When humanity starts to think for itself, something other much larger rolls in on top to deflect or distract, is a better way, I guess.
We are this generation of humanity, which we're all part of. It's established. We are now witnessing the magnetic excursion of our poles. I mean, the South Pole is now almost to the Indian Ocean. The North magnetic pole will be in Russia. I mean, it's accelerating its movement. And the thing that when we talk about weather and we talk about crops, we talk about everything else, is that we never talk about what magnetism, electromagnetic pools of our pole, of our magnetosphere. No one is witnessing something like this. I mean, you're talking potentially an upheaval.
And the human, and then go on with that, continue that thought of the magnetic hemispheres of the brain in the human as well being affected by that same polarity change.
Good point.
I think it's the cause of the mental illness increase lately is the magnetic pole excursion. I think it's causing the wiring somehow is getting scrambled, especially people who don't, aren't conscious of what they're doing and don't meditate and try to get themselves somewhat sedated. If they let themselves get out of control, which they are now doing, they actually go completely out of control now.
Is that a cause for the anger we're seeing in people? I mean, the brutality and the nuts is crazy.
Yeah, I think it's magnetic fields interfering with the brain function. Actually.
I would go even further than that. Consciousness is frequency. Okay, so the frequency that your brain operates at determines the kind of response you can have and the kind of perception that your brain will allow. But the big factor in that, big factor is nutrition. Without nutrition, you can't maintain frequencies. That's why we eat, because food is frequency. And there's a lot of waste that gets produced just to, be able to extract a few frequencies by tuning. But without food and without good food, we're going down. We have been going down for a long time. And I think that we're headed into a crisis, and all the pressures that we were all just mentioning, talking about, add to that. When you're under stress, your nutritional banks or supply in the body are used up at 4 times their normal rate. And if you're not replacing at 4 times your normal, then your perception becomes entirely skewed. Depression, anger, irritation, you keep pressing that button, it goes eventually. There's only 2 things that the brain is capable of, and that's pain and pleasure. Everything is a version of those 2 things. And if you start pressing that pain button, which they've done a lot of research with that kind of thing, down the road, very quickly, actually, not down the road, you end up with rage, and following that is temporary insanity. And temporary insanity is a protective stage for consciousness so that the human in temporary insanity doesn't know that he hurt someone. We are geared to love, not hurt one another. So we're headed in a really difficult direction.
I agree, absolutely. And it almost seems like it's an inhuman type of control structure that's happening, but not inhuman in the way that people think that it actually is. I don't think that it's an actual extraterrestrial race that is controlling us or the earth. I think that it's a consciousness that is possibly in control, and they're able to transfer this might sound a little woo-woo, but it's just what I've been really thinking about here recently. It's a consciousness that's been transferred into a human-like shell, like an avatar, in order for that consciousness to walk around in our reality here. They wouldn't be able to just come here from a different planet and be physical beings and walk around here. They would have to have some kind of doll body avatar that looks very similar to us. And that's where the whole thought and the idea and the concept comes from with, people saying that they're already amongst us. They're already here. Well, they probably are, but they look exactly like us. They're the same entity. They just have a different conscious level. Me and David were talking about this yesterday. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
I think the bigger thing that really is important is consciousness is catchy. When you have frequencies that come into contact with one another, they either harmonize, they get into constructive interference or destructive interference, or they end up in what's called they produce binaural frequencies, and those frequencies then interact and produce trinaural and quadnaural and quinaural. We don't understand yet consciousness, or most people do not understand how it works. So if you have a bad apple, everybody in that family is going to be similar, have similar responses and attitudes, etc. Because consciousness is, we copy. That's how we learn, we copy. So there are people here that are really destructive. It's not just ETs. We're all from somewhere else. But there's a whole slew of good people here working their buns off, trying to get us to wake up and take responsibility and step into our own power. So,
David, what do you think about this issue? Do you think that we are being controlled by an extraterrestrial race, like a lot of people seem to believe that we are, or is it something different? Is it a consciousness? Because it's hard to believe that for some people that it's just human beings doing this to human beings. You know, so
maybe I'll step back into frequency for a second here. Now, with the changes in the frequency that are happening on the sun and truly across our solar system, I'm wondering with that frequency resonance, as it changes and our perception changes in the brain, that things that were not in our visual field of view suddenly become visible. And this is why the programming of get ready for these things that are not really of either sex are being programmed into us. Because the field of view, we might suddenly just start to see something one day it's always here. The frequencies are layered in, but we're just not tuned into that one. And suddenly, boom, we start to see these entities that were always here, but we just weren't in tune with them, but suddenly we are. So how do you explain that to the masses, that you're going to start to see something that's not, it's sort of similar to what you did, it is, it's not, it is. I mean, I really think there's a lot of things that are going to go through visually and auditorially. So what you're going to start to hear things also. So this frequency is moving through, and these changes in our sun, the magnetic field on our planet are changing. I think what we hear, literally what we hear, and what we see are also going to change from what was considered established norms through the last, say, 50, 100, 150 years until now. I think we're going to come into some rapid changes with the magnetic field. And at the same time, there's going to be rapid changes in what we see, hear, and observe around us. So explain that to the global populace without causing a panic.
No, that's absolutely exactly right. You can take infrared pictures of these entities that are in the sky around us, and I frequently do. And there are literally trillions of entities that are invisible to us, all around us all the time. We live at the bottom of a sea of a plasma, which extends outward even past the orbit of the moon, and it contains all these millions, trillions of entities who, you know, some notice us, some don't care about us, and some notice us in a bad way. And we got to be careful of that too. So I look at it more of a dimensional plane, and that people mistake encounters with these invisible entities. So sometimes you can see them as aliens and all this other stuff.
Wayne, what do you think about this UFO and extraterrestrial narrative that's going around right now? I mean, is it going to play a role in the coming years, possibly even play a role in the 2024 presidential election? What's your thoughts on, because it's a threat narrative, right, that they're trying to play on humanity. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think what I'm focused in on, you know, what I teach on my channel, I teach basically about, demons, angels, these unseen beings that have controlled our consciousness for thousands of years. I mean, that's what the Bible is written about. It's not written about physical man as much as it's written about these unseen beings having influence and control upon us. So in one aspect of it, we're very well versed in that perception of alien life. What's an angel? What's a demon? But what I think we're seeing today is that, because I come out of 50 years of Christianity, is that we're seeing a collapse of a belief system. And if there is such a disclosure, then it's going to challenge that perception, because there's a lot of people, and I speak of here in America, that truly believe we're in the tribulation. I mean, that's kind of the underlying theme in the churches, is that what we're witnessing is Daniel, his prophecy of the 70 weeks come to pass. So it's really where cognitive dissonance becomes into play, because there's going to be some people who just can't handle this. And I think that that's where you see this complete shutdown.
What do you think is the end goal with this CIA RAND disclosure? Because it's never what it seems to be.
Well, I think we have to understand that they've gone too far, the elites, and they can't go back now, because if they go back or they let go of power, there will be a complete examination of what they were doing, and they will all go to jail. So they can't relent power. They're not going to relent power. And I think this is and so I think that, they're planning to raise the ante, and and so what they have is like 18 poker tables going, and each one they're going to choose to play at is their next game. And so this is now their alien game that they're playing. Not saying there isn't aliens or anything like that. I'm just saying that this thing reeks of.
And now they can pretty much classify any anomalies in the sky as UFOs, right? Unidentified objects, foreign satellites can now be UFOs. Weather balloons are now UFOs. Space trash can be UFOs. I mean, you can throw a trash can up into the air and take a super blurry photo of it, and it's a UFO, right? So where do you think that they're heading with all of this talk and this ramping up of UFOs and extraterrestrials, David?
Free energy. I wouldn't say free energy. It's fuel-less generators and magnetic motors, to unveil that technology without telling everybody, oh, by the way, we put those patents in the closet from the 1880s and the 1890s. Really worked on it when Wardenclyffe Tower was around, and Marconi got into the wireless technologies as well, and Dr. Brown with the antigravitics in the 1960s. Sorry, we kept that from you. That was for military application, but because, as Wayne had referenced here, we are going to flip over to the Fed now, but at the same time, there's a new overnight interest rate called SOFR, S-O-F-R. That's also going to be the new benchmark rates between what was the LIBOR, which is a London interbank overnight lending rate. But between that, there's about 0.02% of difference on those, somewhere around $700 quadrillion in derivative contracts. So to reset an entire system, A, they don't match. B, they want to take everybody to universal basic income. And the only way they're going to do that after the planet gets completely bankrupt and reset is bring out free energy. And that way you could still have the things that you would need in your home, but they're not going to come out and say, by the way, we shelved all this for 100 plus years, and we made you go mine rare earth minerals and put up these junky solar panels when you could have had something half the size of this desk in your home that could have run that from the 1910s, and we would have never had to put a copper cable above our heads, which when you also talked about the inhabitation of a consciousness in that, I'm wondering if there was super connected in the rollout of everything. But I really think it's not going to be soft disclosure about, yeah, there's other beings out there in the skies. It's going to be about trying to bring that tech that we've developed over the last 120 years into the home without having too many questions asked, and get everybody onto this universal basic income. And you will be beholden to those generators or those ones who are manufacturing it if your social credit score is good enough. And you can see how this whole twisted world is moving forward here. And I think that's really what it's about. It's not about saying that there's somebody from Martians are coming back or whatnot. And Wayne, you raised your hands. I saw you with it. So what are you going to go at?
No, I mean, this seems like a simulation. I mean, because it comes to one end, and that is total control of us. required reading in high school, George Orwell, 1984. Who'd ever thought that we'd actually see it? And we did it to ourselves. I think that's what this internet is about. I mean, I'm turned 68 this last week. I was one of those guys that helped develop this thing called the internet. We didn't, back in the 90s, we didn't know what it could do. And now here, nearly 25 years, I look back and I think, my God, what did we create here? What did we unleash? And if it wasn't us, then consciousness is energy. Energy is never going to go wasted. Then that means someone is either cultivating this or using this for a purpose. And it just seems like anywhere you look today, it's just more bad news. And it seems to be pushing us towards, I go back to Deagle.com. When Deagle was out there, are we about on the precipice of something that's going to really impact humanity in 2024? Because if you go by Deagle, the United States will see nearly a 200 million reduction in population. GDP will be down 71%. Is this what all these shortages are about? Is this merely a precursor of something that they have to have in place when this thing is finally unlatched? I don't know. There's brilliant minds here.
And also an increase in mental illness. So I think that is all coupled together with, like, the food shortages and then the prescription drug shortages, which I believe is going to really drive the mental problem to skyrocket when the drugs stop. So, it's time to go local and time to take care of your family and your community, and probably stay close to home.
Wow. One of the things that I avoided saying, but I'm going to bring it up. One of the things I see repeatedly is that there's some kind of flooding, big flooding, not over the whole U.S. like the solar flash would indicate, but some sort of like area flooding. I cannot see where that is. I don't know why it doesn't become clear what's under that water, but there's a lot of stuff floating in it, and it looks like it's on a coastline. So it looks like it's in the U.S. I think you, Ryder, said are we looking at some sort of natural disaster? And I think we are. And maybe it's volcanoes, maybe it's earthquakes, or something really, really difficult is coming our way, on top of what I think looks like next year, across the whole U.S.
Yeah, that's why they don't care about the debt or anything like that, because they believe, the elites believe, and I can show you exact evidence that there's some kind of disaster coming. They believe it's a solar disaster, and they're prepping for it. But they've been doing it ever since 1957, 1958. They put together the geophysical year, and they sent people out all over the earth to do measurements and everything. And they came back, and NASA was created the next year, and the deep underground bases were begun the next year. And you can just see the traces of the whole thing. And they discovered that there was a periodic solar disaster that causes massive fires, and it's periodic every 12,000 years.
Yeah, there's actually more than that. There's a 6,000-year event every 6,000. There's another one every 3,000. There's another one every 2,500. But the big one is every 12. So
we're due, because the countdown is here. We're at 12,000 years.
I know. I do this thing called the language of energy, and it's symbolism basically, and I understand the green energy and the language of the birds, and the language of energy is the same thing. And I keep looking at, okay, what does that tell us about what's coming? And basically it says you don't know anything about what goes on in a natural system we have wasted our time with all kinds of entertainment and silly stuff that doesn't really do anything, instead of developing consciousness and understanding how do we get off the planet or get inside. And do we want to get inside if the continents are roaming around the surface, ramming around? Go ahead, Wayne.
So, yeah, I used to be heavily into Nibiru, the whole, ninth planet, the thing coming around. And I do a lot of meditation. I did it, 10 years ago. And I was meditating one day, and it dawned on me that if any of this is true, the whole planet coming in and destruction of the earth, we're still talking the death of billions of people here. And I often wonder, how does consciousness absorb that much death in such a small constricted time? It has to have reverberation, as above, so below, as below, so above. I was talking on my channel this morning that if you follow that, there must be an upheaval already taking place in the heavens.
Oh,
Well, when I was writing my book, A Monument to the End of Time, one thing that we kept looking into mythologies about eschatology, and one thing we kept coming up against was that somehow if you're alive at the end of the world, that was a good thing. And there was an Irish quote, "May you be alive at the end of the world," a Celtic phrase. And all over in India and North American Indians, we kept finding this idea that the apocalypse was the mass death of everybody, but it was somehow this incredible spiritual event. And it's unclear as to what that really means. I'm just telling you what I discovered, looking at mythology.
A mass ascension event, an after-death ascension.
Well, not
Well,
necessarily.
it's like an alchemical experiment where there has to be enough souls for this thing to work. And they're willing to blow everything on getting enough things here for it to happen. And they're perfectly kind of obvious in their writings that that's what they're doing. They're trying to make a new human. And that's what they're saying. They're perfectly clear about what their intentions are.
That's a perfect...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go, Wayne.
No. I was just saying that 5 years ago, I did a video that Earth was being terraformed.
Yeah.
Yep. And they got the new tenant. It's ready to move in, and we ain't on the lease.
And that's a perfect segue into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, because that is AI in this.
Ryder, could I stop you for a second before we jump in there?
Go ahead, David.
The research and study that I've been doing shows that, speaking of these longer time cycles, if we go back to 79 AD, gas giants form what is perceived from Earth as a perfect square in the sky with Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune.
Yeah.
The Earth will pass through this, where the sun will be on one side of us, and this second magnetic field of interlooping of the gas giants we're going to pass through that. Now, that will occur in October of 2024. The actual date's October 23rd of 2024. Nobody can really explain what this will do to us as a human. Again, we'll come back to that frequency and brain function. Don't know what's going to happen to the top 2 miles of the crust, but according to, those who follow global liquefaction events and things called mud floods or, reset. You can go back into Tartaria, it would be a good example. A lot of lost history, especially across China, things buried. But as we swing through this dual magnetic field, there's going to be some repercussion. And then, the scariest thing, okay, that's set A, and we're going to come through that dual magnetic field, squeaking right through the middle of it. But as we pass out of that, coming into, say, April, somewhere around the April of 2025, as we come in front of the sun, we're the only thing in front of the sun. All of the gas giants are behind us. The sun's behind us. Everything's pulling whatever space debris straight into the face of our planet until we come back around to the safety behind the sun once again. So between what would be liquefaction events and magnetic field disturbances, we don't know what's going to happen with the ionosphere or some kind of electrical conduit between the sun, Earth, and then our crust. Could that be disrupted? There's a lot of unknowns that would be happening at this time, but electrical ferocity is one guaranteed thing to increase. Like the electrical storms, when you heard in the past people would run for their lives when they saw it gathering on the horizon, I think we're going to be at that point again. When you even see a storm system coming in, they're going to batten down the hatches and try to get to your basement.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the mysteries of the Cross of Henday, which I wrote 2 books about, is the exploding sun panel has 4 a square around it of 4 what look like flames or like planets on fire. And we've always wondered what the significance of the square for the 4 different objects around the exploding sun were. And I think that what may be the signal that that's when the time is.
Yeah, there's not going to be a complete nullification of the magnetic field in either of those. Will be a transference of it. So they got the potentiality from one body to another body in a magnetic field. And remember, these are going to be looping toroid fields. So nothing's going to be linear shooting across space. It's going to be a looping field. And from the projections that are, the 2 looping fields come in and they overloop on themselves in something called the block wall. And we're going to apparently pass through that. And when it goes in, we're going to get into a zero magnetic field state on our planet for anywhere between seconds, minutes, not even an hour. It's going to be just seconds to minutes as this looping field comes over and interloops on itself. We're going to pass straight through that and we'll be out of it as quickly as we're into it. But it's going to be a significant event. Now, what will happen with our poles? What will happen again with our magnetic fields in our brains?
What's going to happen, with our minds? I mean, the human cosmic rays already been proven drives us nuts. That's why we can't do space travel.
Well, wait a minute. That's, let me say something about...
October 23rd, 2024.
Okay, so Kundalini, when you have a full-blown Kundalini event, what that is in the body is it's an electromagnetic event that moves up through you. And it's roaring. It's like a jet engine. It's like not standing under Niagara Falls. It's a force that allows you to momentarily, because it only takes a few seconds, just like you were saying, David, you have an opportunity at that point to be completely rewired. Your entire brain and your entire body, your chemistry, your hormones, all of your neurotransmitters, everything gets rewired in that moment, unless you're in a bad mood, in which case you degenerate instead of take a step up. So I think personally, the possibility that we move through that looping, whatever it is, those 2 toroids, or we get a shot directly from the sun, or all of those cosmic rays come in, you have to be ready up here mentally to reprogram yourself at a higher level. And you have the oompah to do it at that moment. So I think we should be talking about how do we get to that place where we're sassy enough to say, this is what I'm doing. This is how I am. This is what I'm becoming. And you just keep holding that until when that energy hits, you know it. You do know it because it increases your heart rate. I think my heart rate would go up to somewhere around 200 beats a minute back then. Your blood pressure, the heat in the body, parts of the body could melt off. They have in the past, not for me, but for others. An arm or a leg, or the person bursts into flame. It's called idiopathic. They don't know where it comes from. Well, it comes from you have a massive charge moving through the body, and it short circuits and starts a fire. So you burn up from the inside out. But if you're ready, or if you're in this place of great love, that's the magic key to being able to take that energy and revamp yourself and move from 3rd dimensional being to 4th or 5th or even 6th. So
it's a real bifurcation of the species.
It is.
I ask you, do you think that the changing magnetic field is associated with this coming square of the large gas giants? Do you think that might be what's causing it?
I think that adds to it. A square is symbolically, that is your first stability, your first area that you can step into and count on the energies circulating in a particular way. If you're directing those energies, you can. The triangle, the pyramid is the other one that allows you to route energy. But I think we live in boxes for a reason. I think we're moving to the sphere for a reason, but I think we have this massive opportunity coming at us to use those energies, and that all of those things together are a factor. I don't think anything can be different or it won't work. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, Jay, if you like to, or anybody, I put the images of the 2024 alignment in the chat box, so feel free to look at that. And also, Penny, to dovetail on that, Aquarius is the only, if you look at the star maps from the 15 and 1600s, Aquarius is the only one that shows the actual Birkeland current flow out to one of the eyes of Pisces and one of the fish in Pisces.
Oh, wow.
Of the other 12 zodiac, there's nothing coming out, but it is so clean that the pouring out of the water bear is showing some sort of Birkeland current that flows directly from the star system itself in Aquarius somewhere. The seed point, the Chinese put the seed point of human consciousness up in the Big Dipper. That's why the cult of the Big Dipper is such a big thing. They still worship that in the Emperor's Mandate of the Heavens. But that pouring out, that Birkeland current goes right into Pisces. And it's interesting how we're exiting out of, these different symbols that you see through. What are we exiting out of? The fish was the Jesus Christ with the fish. So that era of the birth of Christ coming through and then, exiting out into the water bear. But how do those two connected? And why is it so symbolic right now that we're in this?
I think the water bearer, that's Aquarius.
It's not really water. It's more of an energy flow. And they couldn't explain it with the water tipping out, but I think flows of energies are what that was explained.
Exactly. Yeah. If you read some of the ancient work, they talk about the great ocean. And they're talking about the ocean of space. It's full of energy currents and waves, just like on the regular ocean. So that's, it's misunderstood. It's not about water. It's about the pouring out. Aquarius is the pouring out of massive amounts of currents and waves of frequency onto whatever, the humanity that exists at the time.
So Dave, do you think that this alignment could cause a Birkeland current to go between the sun and these gas giants?
Yeah, something like this. It's going to be a transference of magnetism. Now, you notice that looks like the top of the Kabbalah also. If you were to strip and just have the top of the Kabbalah. So I believe that's the beginning of the cycle marking. Now you have to spin through the rest and find the bottom segment of it where it would come in with the square on the bottom with the triangle that, points downward on that. And then that would be the completion of the cycle. I just haven't...
It's not just the Kabbalah. You've got the sun at Chippereth. And that's exactly where the sun is in the tree of life.
Yeah, right. You got the tree of life right there. Now, where's the bottom completion of it? I haven't really gone out and spun out in the diagrams that far. I'm too busy growing my vegetables right now.
Good for you.
No, that's no joke. Like, I want to stay alive through this event. I want to see the plasma displays in the skies. My whole goal is to stay alive through this so I can witness it.
I know. I'm right there. Growing my own food and working my butt off to really put things together and help other people. I don't want to be the only one here. So
besides that, you get a great tan and a good workout.
Yeah, that's true.
The bottom of the Kabbalah would technically be Earth.
Right.
That's the foundation stone is Earth. So.
So that's where we sit on the alignments there. So you can see that there could be something significant happen. In the last time, just for FYI, the last time that this same alignment occurred was 79 AD, and it was 1 degree of arc off. So it's not exactly the same as 79 AD. It's 1 degree arc difference than it was then. So if you're looking at arc minutes through the heavens there, 360 degree arc minutes, 1 minute back. So 360 cycles back would bring us back to 79 AD, but we're talking what, 360,000 years approximately? No, it would be 720,000 years through one loop of that.
Wow.
Well, this is the first time I've heard of anyone talking about the fact of the Earth in transition in the center of this, where the sun will be in a neutral state of magnetism. Yeah, that's significant. I mean, you got the consciousness of ever how many souls will be on this planet at that time. I mean, wow. That's significant. I'd like to get more into this.
Yeah.
But then what happens to the people that don't have souls?
Well, that's just it.
That are inorganic beings. Which ones are no longer going to be here? Are the inorganic ones going to be destroyed, or the organic ones are going to be destroyed?
Well, what's a soul? How do you define what's a soul?
Consciousness.
Consciousness.
Right. So everything that exists, every form, is made of consciousness. It's inherent. It's the intent within. The signature of your frequencies is the signature of your consciousness. And that's
how do you get a consciousness, though? You would have to be an organic being. I don't believe that everyone has a consciousness. I don't believe that everyone has what you would call a soul.
Not everyone has a human consciousness that fits. What year is this? 2023 in the United States of America. There are other forms of consciousness, lots of them. Stones, plants, animals, planets, just the air, fire, water, all those are forms of consciousness, and they can be communicated with. So to say that that's an inorganic being, I think that those kinds of definitions are, I'll say, old science, where science is catching up, but it has a long way to go, a long way. They don't understand the connections. They don't understand the natural world. We really have a lot to learn. I'll say it nicely. We have a lot to learn. And I think that's exciting. I'm very excited about the future.
I absolutely believe, Penny, that, plants and trees and everything that's organic has a consciousness. I just think that it's plausible that there are people that are walking around that does not have a consciousness.
No, they're conscious. It's just not the kind of consciousness that we have. Okay? Even a robot has consciousness.
But that would be a synthetic consciousness,
not
a real organic consciousness.
Okay, so we can talk about levels of consciousness and consciousness signatures. It doesn't have the signature of a Ryder Lee or a Wayne.
Computers will never have consciousness. Never. AI will never have consciousness. You need to have a body to have consciousness.
We'll see.
No, they won't. I mean, I'm a programmer. 40 years of programming. I know how computers work. It's just ones and zeros, and they're never going to figure anything out beyond whatever you program them to figure out. They're never going to extrapolate into consciousness reality. It's not going to happen, and that's why I'm not worried about AI becoming conscious. I'm worried about bad people using AI.
Bingo.
For bad reasons.
Yeah. But consciousness is frequency, and that machine, that computer, has some frequency in it. It is
many frequencies. A computer has probably 600-700 different things with different frequencies going on. Chips and capacitors and all the stuff that makes up a computer is all giving off. That's why you got to be careful around a computer, because you're getting so many weird frequencies.
I know. Yeah, mine crashes regularly. But I think we have to expand our definition of consciousness. Are we talking about human consciousness? Hang on here. I forgot to turn my phone off.
Sorry.
Or are we talking about some other kind of consciousness?
Well, there's only one kind of consciousness, and when the consciousness is in a dog, it's dog consciousness, and when it's in a cat, it's cat consciousness. When it's in a human, it's human consciousness, and that's where instincts come from. That's why the cat knows what to do without ever having a parent around to teach it. And so consciousness is this multifaceted thing that's different within each organism. That's why you have to have a body to be conscious.
Well,
tree can be conscious. It has a body.
If you're going to have human consciousness, you have to have a human body.
So, absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with that.
Yep. Wayne, what do you think about this concept? Do you think that every human on the planet has a consciousness?
I don't think they have the same soul or originate. And little anecdote to this, F. Paul Wilson, who I think is a brilliant science fiction writer, in his book Night World, the thing that hit the earth was basically there is a consciousness, but it's not how we perceive it. There's two great consciousness. And because there was a really bad dude about ready to take, and Jay, I see you shake your head. Have you read the book Night World?
Oh yeah, I love.
Yeah, it's.
that file.
I recommend it to all your whole audience, Ryder. You really should read that book, Night World. Then you'll get hooked into the Repairman Jack. But my point is, this whole discussion for the last hour is that it seems like we're being herded down into a funnel that represents death for us, death for a lot of people. And I don't know, in my spirit, that's wrong. There's a purpose. Are we about to be sacrificed? Is this what we're talking about? The sacrifice of a galactic proportion? If not, then this is insane.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is. It's a ritual sacrifice. That's what's going on, and it's by a group of people who follow a spiritual dogma, one that you and I probably don't agree with, but it's there. And the older I get and the more I look into it, the more I realize that there is an extremely nefarious force loose on this planet, and it seeks to control our very soul. And I don't know what else to say. I mean, I looked at it very closely, and that's my only conclusion. And it really doesn't care about life either, by the way. It likes death. It is a death cult. And I think that is exactly right. It's a cult that worships death.
Which is crazy. Everyone made fun of him for the frogs, but he was right about the frogs. Things are crazy. Things are getting wild.
Years.
But Dave, how do you think that AI is going to play a role in our future? I mean, we already have AI chats, AI rendered photos, AI rendered videos. I feel like it's really going to blur the lines between reality and fantasy, as if it already hasn't blurred the lines enough already. So should we be afraid of AI, Dave?
If you look at it the way that it's supposed to be taken to make everything as fake as it can be, so then there'll need to be human validators to sit next to you to say, yes, I'm a human, validated as a human, and I saw this person, David, as a human, make the content. So it's approved by me as a human validator that David made the content as a human, and this is validated as a human-made piece of content. This is the direction it's going to need to go. Because it's not going to take much longer, even by when we talk October of 2024 here, it'll be so good, the deep fakes, that you won't even know what's happening as, comets or I shouldn't say comets, but bolides and meteorites come rolling in. What's the news? What's real? What's fake? It hit over in Paris? Oh, something hit here. Will you even know? Because the newscasters will look real. I mean, they did that fake thing with the Pentagon getting hit like a couple weeks ago, and it dropped stock market in Asia when it was still nighttime here. I really believe
I still have Biden's tape, by the way, where he stuck his hand right through the blue screen. I mean,
that stuff
what the freak was that about? I mean,
It went right through the microphone.
Doesn't this diminish us?
You made that piece of content. That's where it's going. It's disruption everywhere in terms of business, and
we just
the whole world's being disrupted at the same time. I'm sorry, Penny. Last thought here. I can't believe that AI is rolling out at the same time to disrupt everything that we know in the human domain. At the same time, everything's being disrupted in the climate domain and the magnetic field domain, and it's all overlapping on top of this series of complete disruptions, a scatter pattern, interference pattern, just to keep everybody distracted from what's really going on. Because we could all say no, and the death cult would stop.
No, this is like being at the roulette wheel and it keeps on hitting 00. You're going, wait a minute, it's been 57 times it's been 00,
I think that's what all those consciousnesses are here to do. It's to come together and become a force to make something happen that we decide. And that's why they're trying to make sure that there's not too many of us around, because consciousness is power.
As we figure out everything, which is what we're all doing, they throw interference patterns at us in a constant way. And that's what's going on. And that's when I think that the disclosure alien thing is just another interference pattern to stop us one more time from, because they're really afraid of us all realizing what's going on at the same moment. And they